So, yeah, the MCAT, and I put a picture of a mountain here. I felt it was very fitting, the mountain, because it's like climbing a whole mountain to be able to even get to the point where you take this exam at the very top. So just a quick overview about what we'll be doing, a little bit of info about me, pretty much why you should trust me, and then some more basic information like what the MCAT actually is, a basic sort of study plan. I meant to change this in this. This is from last time. This is just like a study plan itself. And then some different testing device I had heard and some common mistakes to avoid. So why should you care what I say? Why even listen to me? So I got a 97th percentile score on my MCAT, which is pretty good. And this is coming up from a diagnostic score of a 501, which is right at the average score for the exam. And I am no longer actually a current MCAT tutor. I used to be an MCAT tutor, but unfortunately I just don't know the content anymore. I let it all slip from my mind. But at the time I originally gave this, I was an MCAT tutor. So my specific score breakdown, if you've seen these before, really the only section I did bad on was the reading section. Everything else I did pretty good on. And that's a section you can't really study for, so it's a shame. So what is the MCAT? Obviously the MCAT's this big exam you got to take to get into medical school. It's one of the hardest exams that is currently available in the world even. Split up into 4 sections. You got like chemistry and physics, reading, biology and biochemistry, and then psych-soc. And they all have 59 questions except for the critical analysis and reading section, which only has 53. And the test is about 7.5 hours long, with a few breaks in between, and you should be taking the whole time on this exam. You should not be trying to finish early and get out of there. One of the big things is with any extra time you have, you need to be using it, doing something, either checking your answers or just going back through and looking at different questions, trying to figure them out if you couldn't get them right the first time. And it has this really weird system of scoring, and I think, yeah, it's broken down even further here then. So right in the middle, right about average is 500. I believe the average accepted MCAT score, if you're looking for something to get into medical school, is 511. So you already have to prove you're better than about 80% of everyone else who wants to go to med school. And then up here is just where you get higher, and you can see how even like a 524 is somehow considered a 100th percentile on this scale. It's not entirely 100% accurate because that should be like a 528 technically. But yeah, you have to do pretty well if you want to be able to get into medical school, so it matters a lot. What are the questions like? In the science sections, you have 10 passage-based sets, which is like where you get a full big passage, you have to read through it, and then you get about 4 to 6 questions based on what you just read from that passage. And then on top of this, you also get 15 standalone questions randomly between these passages, and these are literally just like, do you know it or do you not know it type of questions. All of it's multiple choice, by the way. And in cars, there's only 9 passages, 5 to 7 questions per passage. So a lot of the exam is kind of like when you took the SAT or ACT. I'm sure you all remember reading those big passages and then answering the questions after that. It's just sort of harder because it's on college level content instead. And a lot of the questions for passages can actually be answered without using the passage. A lot of them do end up testing outside knowledge, but then there are always going to be a few that you end up needing the passage to answer. So yeah, why should you care? The MCAT is the most important part of your application. It is what's going to make or break your application, honestly. And it's really easy to make up for everything else when you have like a good MCAT score. Even if you have a low or average GPA, a good MCAT score trumps that by a lot. And even if you don't have the greatest extracurricular activities, a good MCAT score trumps that by a lot. But it's really hard to make up for a bad MCAT. If you get an MCAT score down in the lower 500s and you have everything else perfect, you're still kind of resigned to potentially needing to retake the exam or go to a lower school than you might want to go to.
Those passage questions, like, what's like the best way to go about it? Like, read the questions first, read the passage first.
Yeah, so it really is individualized, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I personally always read passages first, then answered questions, but I heard mixed results from other friends who would read questions first, then read passages, or they'd do like a little split between. I know someone who did better than me on the exam actually said they never read the passages unless they thought they were important for the question. So like they just skip them entirely for some passages.
Oh, my impression of like the MCAT was that you basically need to recall like all the little science tidbits or whatever you learned in undergrad, but like even for the science questions, do you get passages in like for chemistry or physics or bio questions?
Yeah, you will get passages that'll really challenge how well you do know these basic facts, because it's kind of impossible to know all of what's going to be on the exam before going into it. So it relies on you knowing all the background stuff needed, that when you're reading the passages, it just makes sense to you then and there in the moment. So like, for example, in organic chem, you can't study every reaction possible. You're going to get a reaction in a passage. I had one that was like 15 steps long. I had no clue what was going on, but the background knowledge sort of solidified in my head, and I kind of figured out how to go about it.
So what would you say is like, for you, what do you think was more helpful, like relying on the passage and then using your reasoning to find the answer, or like all the things you had memorized?
When it comes to my test taking abilities, I'm really good at memorizing. So I think for me, memorization came in most beneficial. But for things that I didn't know, usually you can reason it out if you have enough background. If it's like a passage-based question, you actually can sort of use that to your advantage if you can't memorize all of it.
Are the passages like research papers basically?
Yeah, they're kind of like research papers. If you're really good at reading research papers or you read a lot for a lab, it's helpful. So then getting into just how you should study. When to start, I strongly believe that if you want a really good score, you need to start at least 6 months out from your exam. This is especially true if you're going to have other commitments during the same time. All of us will probably have school, you might have research, doing clinical jobs, that sort of thing. And I do believe MCAT studying is, and it really should be treated like a full-time or at least part-time job. It is this really big time commitment that you're going to be putting multiple hours into every single day. So it comes in 3 different phases. There's the content review phase, the third-party practice problems phase, and then the AAMC phase. I will say that this guide is made for how I studied. I know that the university just gave out like free Kaplan stuff to everyone, which is kind of crazy. I think there's like multi-$1,000 sort of prep, what do you call it, like exam prep things. And so I didn't have access to any of that, so this is kind of based on that. Although I don't think the process here ultimately changes that much. You're still, if you do decide to use those, going to be going through the exact same 3 phases. So what is content review? This is when you're trying to get back into the books and reabsorb all the information from your classes that you might have lost. So your prerequisite courses have prepared you for this exam. It's just, I don't know how much of us really remember things from like MCB 150 or IB 150 or a Psych 100 class you took a long time ago. So content review sort of brings all that stuff back up into your mind so that's fresh and ready to be used when you start moving on to sort of practice problems. So this is what I use. It's what I recommend everyone uses. I think with the new Kaplan stuff, you can just actually get these online free or something like that. So it's the Kaplan textbooks. They make these books. There's one for each sort of subject that's on the MCAT. They're great. They're the gold standard. I have this thing on here because you don't actually need the most recent version of these books if you were going to buy them. They don't really change much year to year, and they're just really expensive, and you can find old ones pretty cheap. And should you take notes while you're doing this type of thing, I believe strongly that you should not be taking notes when you're reading these books. Really try to just focus instead on the content. Now maybe for you that is something like highlighting while you're going about it or something like that, which is totally fine if it is, if that's what helps you focus. But for me, whenever I'm starting to take notes and stuff, it just sort of slows me down and breaks my flow that I have going. These are another set of books you can use. These are the Princeton Review textbooks. They're good. They're actually more in depth than the Kaplan books. Sources being Reddit, says that they hit some of the more in-depth content and low yield that's not seen in the Kaplan books. So I didn't really use these that much, although I hear great success stories with them. Anki is especially essential. It's the greatest thing ever made. Whoever created this app needs a lot of money, even though they make it free. So Anki is just flashcards, and they have these pre-made decks that go along with the Kaplan textbooks, which is another reason why I recommend using the Kaplan books. So I have one of these decks. I actually downloaded it. It's in our Phi Chi drive. It's called Anki in there somewhere. I don't know if it's in the MCAT or if there's a separate section for it. I believe it's just in the MCAT folder somewhere. And what this is it gives you flashcards that go along with every single chapter that you read. So you don't even have to bother about taking notes and sort of taking the key takeaways from these different chapters because it's already summarized in these flashcards. So what you do is you read a chapter and then you get the flashcards ready and then you go do all the flashcards. So Anki is something that once you start it, and you're going to start it pretty much as soon as you start reading these textbooks, you need to do it every single day. So it ends up adding up a lot if you end up skipping days. You're going to have hundreds of missed flashcards and that type of thing that you won't be able to get through, or it's just going to feel like a really big slog to get through. So if you need help with this, reach out to me. There's a lot of resources out there for how to use this app. It's pretty complicated though when you're getting into it for the start. It has a really unintuitive AI or UI and that sort of thing. There's this website called Jack Weston. They give out cars daily practice problems. They also do other subjects, but for me, I started practicing cars as soon as I started studying for the MCAT, which didn't actually help that much because my car score on my diagnostic was about matched with what I got on my final exam. So I didn't really get any better at it at the end of the day. But a lot of people do like to just do these sort of cars daily practice questions, and they might be able to bring you from like a lower 120 score up to a more mid 120, a higher 120, 130 level score if you sort of learn how to get better at analyzing passages, especially if you don't read anything else. Khan Academy has videos. So Khan Academy was actually hired by the AAMC to make MCAT videos for all the content that's on the MCAT. I believe their partnership is still going on, and so actually all the content that you can kind of find on the MCAT, Khan Academy has some sort of video for. I believe they have an MCAT dedicated section also. So if you're someone who's more of a video learner, this is also really good to use. And also in that Anki deck I was talking about, they have tags for the Khan Academy video content. So you can actually also be watching a video, finish it, and then go back to Anki and do the flashcards that relate to that video. So I think this is great. I actually did use this a little bit for Psych Soc when I got tired of reading, and I thought it was really helpful. Any questions on like phase one sort of stuff, the content review stuff? It's pretty long, pretty boring.
What's a diagnostics test? Like, when do you take that?
So you can take that like at the very start before you ever start doing anything. The AAMC offers a free, it's like a half-length exam. They call it a diagnostic test. It's really just to see where your weak points are. I probably should have thrown that in here, actually. That's a great suggestion. You do that at the very start before you ever touch anything, just to see exactly where you're going to be at. It gives you a score and everything.
So you shouldn't save it, you should do it right away?
I think you should just do it right away to really identify where your weak points are, yeah. So phase two then, after you've read through all those textbooks, you should be done with all those, or videos, whatever sort of style you decide to pick, or if you go with the Kaplan stuff, whatever Kaplan videos they have for you to do, you then start moving on to sort of practice problems. So what are these? Again, just practice problems, and why don't you just pick problems that are from the AAMC directly because they have them, because you need this for later. But you still need practice doing sort of MCAT level problems so that you know what to expect. So UWorld, I'm sure you've heard of this before if you looked at anything MCAT related. It's just the king of third-party practice problems. Really all you need for this sort of phase is UWorld, and continue doing your Anki. You always do your Anki every single day until you take your exam. And UWorld is just like this really big question bank, and they have the big sort of 4 sections, right? Cars, bio, biochem, etc. But then they also break it down even further into the sub-content that's within the sections. So you can really review questions that might be like things you're struggling on, or just what content you want to hit on what day. and they're really good practice problems. Like, they have these really big explanations after each problem explaining exactly how to get to the right answer and why the right answer is the right answer in the first place. So it's really helpful. It's kind of expensive, and I think there's around 3,000 questions. You should try to finish all of them before being done with the third-party practice problems phase. Unless you start to get too close to your exam date, then you'll move to the next phase regardless. I have on here that you should make a missed questions Anki deck. I did this. I thought it was really helpful. Anytime I missed a question that was in a UWorld problem, I just looked specifically at what the question was testing, which you can usually figure out through the explanations. Or also, AI does a really good job at figuring out the core concept of a question. And AI can help you then make a flashcard also on this question so that you can make sure if there's something related to this content comes up again, you aren't going to miss it in the future. I strongly believe that there is no such thing as a bad question on this sort of exam. These questions are vetted by tens of people at least who are all professionals in their sort of fields. They're not just going to throw a question on there that's like badly designed. If you see a question and you get it wrong and you think bad question, instead you should really be thinking like, why did I not understand that? So this is also when you can do full-length third-party exams, which I think, again, the new Kaplan thing comes with a bunch of these. So you could do these on like the weekends sort of leading up, and you know that like your score is gonna be low on these because you aren't really prepared yet for taking these practice exams, especially if you do them really early in this phase. But they're just sort of to get you used to the whole timing of everything and really figure out, again, where your weak points do lie. So I didn't do any of these because I didn't want to pay for any of them, but some people who I know who did better than me really recommended them. Some people I know who did better than me did worse than me. Some people who I know who did these did worse than me on the final exam. It's just kind of different for everyone. Again, I really highly recommend adding like missed questions to your Anki deck. You can really figure out the core of things. Again, for me, I am though like a very big memory sort of learner. I can memorize a lot of things very well, so this really helps me out. And also, I know I mentioned that the scores are low, but they're also low because they purposely deflate these scores. Because if you were a test company and you want to convince someone to buy more of your product, what are you going to do? You're going to tell them that they're worse at the test than they really are so that they buy more. So you've now gone through about 5 months of studying, and so after about 5 months, you finally get into the final phase here. But before that, do you have any questions on the last stuff? Okay. Yeah.
Where can we find these slides?
They're also in the MCAT folder that's in the academic drive. So this is a phase that you start when you're 1 month out from your exam. Regardless of how far you got in anything else, even if you're still somehow on content review here, you need to stop it and move on. You have to move on to this phase no matter where you're at, even if you didn't finish all the UWorld questions or anything like that. So why is this? You have to move on to the official AAMC practice problems. These are real MCAT questions. You can actually get these questions on your exam. There is potential for that. They're not sort of no longer in use. So this is the best representation of what questions are going to be like because they are literal questions. And again, always continue doing your Anki. You never let that die, the streak that you have running. At this point, your card level should be really low unless you've been making a lot of missed questions. Then your card level might still be pretty high. But you might only have like 50 cards a day at this point if you really kept up with it the whole time, which is very manageable. And this will be the most time-intensive phase of all your studying. I did this over winter break, and I was studying 8 hours, usually more, up to 12 hours a day, every single day my whole winter break junior year. It was not fun, but it is very necessary. So you start this phase at the very beginning with an official full-length exam. So these are the full-length exams posted by the AAMC. And FL, if anyone's wondering, you see that terminology online, it just means full-length. I also went ahead and numbered the way these exams are numbered by sort of general community, so you can get a sense whenever you're reading something about how people are numbering them. Really the only confusing part is that for some reason the free practice exam is FL5, but then the unscored is free unscored. And when you take your official full-length exam, your very first one, you need to follow this 7-point rule that I have. And pretty much what this is if you get to this phase and you take a full-length exam, usually you start with 1 and then sort of go down the line, and you're not within 7 points of where you want to be, you got to move your test date back. You aren't ready. You can't improve really. It's possible, but it's hard to improve more than like 7 points. So like me, for example, I still remember all this. The first full-length exam I took was a 515 at this start of this phase. So I was within 7 points of where I wanted to be, and I was able to improve pretty far up to that. So you got to be within like 7 points. The only exception to this rule is like if on the first exam you get a 520 and your goal score is a 528, obviously you don't have to push your exam back. I mean, you're within 8 points of the max score, you're fine. So I have this on here because whenever you take full-length exams, which you'll be doing sort of throughout this entire process, you need to make sure that you review these exams in extreme detail. So after you take a full-length exam, which is of course about 8 hours worth of testing, the very next day, you need to review the whole entire exam, which sometimes takes even longer because you shouldn't at this point just be reviewing your missed questions. Review every question. Make sure you got questions right for the reason why you think you got them right. Make sure that you're adding more missed questions to your Anki deck. Continue doing your Anki, all that sort of thing. And then the AAMC practice problems themselves, there's about 1,500 of them out there, all split up into really confusing question packs that honestly are just kind of hard to navigate through and get through and figure out where everything is. Of course they are. And you should just sort of space these problems out on days that you aren't like taking your full lengths. So at the very start of phase 3, you'll figure out a full length schedule for when you want to fit in all 6 full length exams before your real exam. And then you'll just fit these practice problems between. And that's what you'll be doing all the way until you take your exam. So the hardest questions, which are also the newest, are these ones called like section bank problems. If anyone's curious, you can either do those right at the end close to your real exam or earlier at the beginning if you're that type of person who wants to see those first. I use this interesting method. I believe I have it. Actually, I know I have it in our MCAT drive called the mini exams method because I really like taking exams. So I took all my practice problems in like a exam format. I like made my own exams out of the practice problems. And how to do that is listed in the MCAT drive folder. So I have this study plan, and I don't know if it will, I think I'll just pull it up at the end and see if I can do that, because I am like recording the PowerPoint right now. I don't want to accidentally close the recording, but I'll show you this at the end. So testing advice, this is what I was talking about earlier. Do what works for you. You have time during your practice problems phases, like phase 2 especially, to figure out what's working for you and getting you the most problems right. For me, that was simply just reading the passages and then going through and doing the questions. For someone else, that might be doing the questions first and then reading the passages, or something else entirely different. Yeah, because I have online, like everywhere you'll see people say how to take the exam. Just don't listen to it and figure out what actually works for you. And one useful tip though that I heard that I actually thought was pretty good from one of my other friends, I stole this from him. Pretty much every time you get to a problem, you're gonna be able to get it down to 2 choices pretty easily. And this is what the AAMC wants to happen. They know when they're making the exam that these 2 choices can both seem correct. And so really when you are taking the exam, you have to figure out which one is wrong and why it's wrong. If you can answer why a question is wrong, like some sort of minute detail behind it, or why an answer is wrong, not a question, that helps a lot. So yeah, focus on why answer choice is not correct at this point versus why one is actually correct over the other. Some other advice, when you're taking the full-length exams, you got to treat it like a real full-length exam. You need to simulate the testing conditions, right? So how I did this is I was up in my room studying for this exam, and they actually do a scan of your wrist to get in and out of the door. So I would like fake scan into my room. I wasn't allowed to be in my room if I wasn't taking the exam or anything like that. And I'd take sort of full breaks and take the full time on everything in every section. And really that helped like timing on the exam day a lot, because I figured out like, okay, do I have enough time to like eat this on exam day? Do I have enough time to like relax a little bit on exam day, or that sort of thing? And also it helps you get prepared in the mental mode, because you're not going to have a phone at all, even during your breaks when you're taking the exam, obviously, or any sort of relaxation at all. So it helps you get prepared to be in that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to be here 7.5 hours taking an exam. I don't want to do it, but I have to. And yeah, you can't really talk to people in the exam center also, so you're really all alone. And yeah, change your sleep schedule. At least over the last month of studying, this one I had to do because it's brutal. The MCAT starts at 8 a.m. Your testing center might be far away too, and so that really sucks. You might have like an hour drive to your testing center depending on where you're at, and you have to wake up even earlier. Yeah, and then of course caffeine is a great piece of advice. Caffeine really is great. If you don't consume any sort of caffeine, you should really think about it at this point. I have caffeine pills. I love them. They're the greatest things ever. And they're really good when you're taking the MCAT and you can't drink a coffee, because they also don't really make you have to go to the bathroom or anything like that. So yeah, I was popping these things between every section of the exam, multiple between every section, and it was just great to help get through the rest of the day. Common mistakes. Waiting too long to start studying. Right? You're studying for the MCAT. It's going to be like compound interest. It's really going to start to accumulate towards the end. You'll see, especially during your last phase, just how much better you're getting at everything every day. And so you got to start studying early, at least 6 months ahead of time. Not using Anki correctly. There's a reason why it's actually used by like every single medical student and someone who's in like that sort of professional level field. It's really good at what it's meant to do, and it really does work. So if Anki doesn't work for you, you're probably just using it wrong. And if you are using it wrong, you need help or anything like that, you can come to me again, like I mentioned earlier. Taking on too many other commitments. Again, MCAT's equal to at least a part-time job and definitely a full-time job at the end. Buying a prep course. I've seen people do it, but it doesn't matter anymore because you have one free. So hopefully you didn't blow thousands of dollars on any sort of prep courses. Taking the MCAT before finishing the prerequisites. So you need to make sure that you hit all your prerequisite courses before you take the MCAT, because you will see when you actually get to test day or when you start doing the practice problems how much that content's actually going to resurface on you. And it's just easier if you've already learned it one time in the past to sort of be like, oh, I remember that, and then get it back in your head. Not simulating testing conditions, yes. Make sure you do that. I actually had a really close friend of mine who got really burned on this one because he was not simulating the testing conditions, and he was scoring like 520s and higher on all his practice exams, and on his real exam he got like a 507, so he got really burned on it. Just because of the test anxiety and that sort of thing. And then, of course, comparing yourself to others, doing what others are doing, trying to always think and do better and like sort of have the perfect studying. I have a poker example in here. I'm actually really into the math of poker, so it's a really interesting game. Just a side note, lots of game theory behind it, which is all really heavily math oriented. But one of the main things in poker that a lot of people get wrong is that you are not playing against the others at the table necessarily. You're really just playing against yourself. It's really more of a solo game than it is any other type of game, especially when you're playing close to like a perfect game. You really need to figure out like how to make certain moves in certain situations. There is actually like a solvable answer for everything. So I have that in here as like, when you're kind of taking the MCAT, it's kind of like playing poker. You think you're comparing yourself to all these other people, and you think you're like kind of trying to outsmart the person sitting next to you taking the next same exam or something like that, but it really isn't. You just need to focus on yourself and figure out what you need to do. And then, yeah, I have this on here because good luck. I think you're worth more than a score. I think the med schools might disagree with me a little bit, which is unfortunate. But that's all I have. And any questions, I'll gladly answer.
Like testing environment, is there like a privacy screen like on CBTF type of thing?
Mine didn't have a privacy screen. It's a little bit different between testing center to testing center. It's like a really weird, even more sort of exclusive thing than the CBTF. Like in mine, I think there are only like 8 computers in the whole thing. There's like a little front room where you go in and sign in and everything, like at the start of the exam. You also take your breaks in that front room. And then there's a back room. The back room is where you have to do the wrist scan to get in. And then when you're taking the exam, your computer, at least in mine, every computer was facing a window that was like behind you all. And there were people sitting there the whole time you're taking your exam, like watching you through the glass, making sure that you aren't doing anything. That was their whole job.
Jeez. Is there a piece of paper that you can write on, or like what's like the notepad for that?
Yeah, so it's a really weird sort of dry erase pad actually. And you can find like examples what they look like online. You get like a little marker, and I think there's a little eraser, if I remember right, either on the marker or somewhere. And it's like 7 dry erasable sort of paper sheets. You won't go through all 7 unless you're using some sort of test taking strategy that has you writing down a lot of things. Because like I think I only use like 3 pages of it, even for all the math, because there is no calculator. You have to do all the math by hand or in your head.
Yeah. So like there's no formula sheet, like
There is no formula sheet. You have to memorize all your formulas.
So how do you do that? You just write everything down?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I do. So pretty much for the last month leading up to the exam, and you can start this sooner or whatever, every single day I'd practice writing out my formula sheet from memory. And then when exam day finally came, yeah, like, cause I think this is allowed, I'm pretty sure it is, while the instructions are going on like the screen, it's like a 5-minute period there before it starts you straight into chemical and physical sciences. I wrote out my whole entire formula sheet during that time and just made sure I had it handy then.
Yeah, when you want on your breaks,
Mm-hmm.
like, they don't like take it away from your erase or anything like that. So it's like
No, it just sits at your desk while you're on your break.
Okay, so let's say like you graduate spring 2026 and you want to apply to medical school
Mm-hmm.
that following May, so like May 2027. Like given that you have to also wait to get your score back, and like there's also a possibility of needing to retake, when do you start studying and when should you take it?
So for me, this is exactly why I took mine in January. Part of the reason for that was in case I needed a retake. So I really thought that I was going to be applying to medical school last year. Like I was really in it, ready to apply and that sort of thing. But it just didn't pan out because I didn't have some of my extracurriculars all the way done and that sort of thing. So take it early enough for you where you think if you have to end up retaking it, you'll have enough time to study and sort of get ready again. So like the application for AMC opens up in May, but you can't usually submit it until like right at the end of May. So you can kind of do it any time between then. Usually the latest you would want to go then is like a late April exam so that you can get your score right before you have to submit it, because you want to submit your AMC application, as far as I know, on the very first day.
Okay, and if you want to account for like a retake, would you suggest doing it in January then?
Depends again how much time you think you need to like restudy if you do need to retake. If you want to take it instead like in February or something and give yourself more time, and then if you have to retake, just plan on taking it like a late April exam date. You can do that. If you want to do it January, you do April. The reason why I have January as like the first time is because there's no exams between like August to January. There's no exams during that time period. So you have to kind of take them all at the later half of the year in summer or earlier half of the year.
Last question. Since you took it January, for your summer and your fall, because your fall, you took biochem in your fall, so how
Yeah.
have you studied biochem during the summer and in the fall? You're still learning it.
I did not do content review for biochem. I banked on knowing it from the class, which was a big risk, but it paid off for me because I did memorize it all. Okay.
How early do you like sign up for the test? Because I know it's like the longer you wait, the less chances you have a place close to you. So it's like,
Yeah. So you want to sign up as soon as it opens. So the sooner you can figure out the month you want to take your exam, the better. Like figure that out right now. You should pick a month and stick with it. What month you're going to take your exam. And then sign-ups for spring exams open up in October, I think. And sign-ups for summer exams open up sometime in the spring.
When did the January one come out?
That'd be like October.
October.